Welcome everyone to the meeting, the Planning Committee meeting number 212. This meeting is being broadcast on the internet and the recording of this meeting will be published on Council's website. Given the COVID-19 circumstances, we can't have members of the community here with us in the gallery, and it's terrific that we can still share our meetings with you via the live stream, and councillors are tuning in from wherever they are at the moment via Zoom. Council would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Wadawurrung people, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. I'd like to introduce the panel to you. So I am Councillor Kylie Grisbeck. I've got the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Trent Sullivan with us. I've got Councillor Jim Mason. I've got Councillor Peter Murrahy, Councillor Anthony Aitken, Councillor Bruce Harwood, Councillor Eddie Contell, and Councillor Dr. Belinda Maloney. I'd like to introduce the officers to you. We have Joanne Van Slagren, who's the Manager of City Development, with us on the line. We have John Rush, who's the Coordinator of Statutory Planning. We have Shane Pritchard, who's the Team Leader of the Planning Department. We have Claire McVilly, the Senior Statutory Planner from Statutory Planning. And we have Lee Page, a Senior Statutory Planner with Statutory Planning. So that was a lot of mouthful. Let's move on to our items. For the procedure for the hearing for the items tonight will be that the officers will present a brief summary of the written report to the committee. The panel may ask questions of the officers, and I will detail some of the submissions made to the committee, and the panel will then further discuss the application, and then we'll go to making a decision. The decision of this committee is final. It is the final decision of council under the delegated authority. If anyone is aggrieved by the decision of this committee, they may appeal to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, the VCAT, in Melbourne, and our staff can assist you with those processes during office hours. We do have apologies tonight from the Mayor, Councillor Asher. We have apologies from Councillor Mansfield, Councillor Nelson, and I think that's it. The confirmation of the minutes. So I need to have confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting dated 21 September 2020. Can I have a mover, Councillor Mason, and a seconder, Councillor Sullivan? All those in favour to move those minutes? Thank you, and that is carried. Anyone has any declarations of conflicts of interest to declare? I don't see any hands up. I'm going to take that as a no, but please let us know during the process if there are any conflicts to declare. The matters for consideration today, the first one we're going to go with is 4 Star Street in Geelong. It's planning application PP 3312020, and I'd like to hand over to the officer, Lee Page, to take us through that application. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at some point in this, given the context of this application, I will play a video. I'll try to share my screen and play a video that the applicant has actually submitted. But before I do that, I'll just run through the initial part of my presentation. So the application proposes the change of use from a workshop to a dwelling, and this includes demolition works, alterations and additions to the existing building. The subject site consists of an existing building located on the corner of Star Street and an unnamed laneway. The dwelling is proposed to contain 4 bedrooms, open living, kitchen, dining area, 2 bathrooms, a garage with car stacker, and an upper level outdoor area. A new first floor bedroom is proposed to be constructed internally within the existing walls, with a second floor is proposed to extend up from the first floor and provide a roofed north-facing terrace. The maximum height of the dwelling is proposed to be 8.6 metres above the height of the existing footpath pavement at the southeast corner of the existing building. A new garage is also proposed to be built over the southern part of the vacant land to the west of the subject site. The new garage will accommodate 2 cars with an installed car lift. The site is located within the Activity Centre Zone, Schedule 1, and is located within the Heritage Overlay HO 977. However, this building has no heritage significance, as well as being partially within the Special Building Overlay, which is limited towards the southeast corner of the subject site. So the application has been assessed against the relevant planning policy framework, the municipal planning strategy, the zone, particular and general provisions of the Greater Geelong Planning Scheme, where it is considered that the use of a dwelling is in keeping with the objectives of the precinct as it allows for accommodation uses. Consideration has also been given in relation to Clause 54 for a single dwelling on the lot, with the proposed development generally meeting the requirements within this clause. However, there are concerns regarding the car parking access to the site. The unnamed laneway that the car park will be accessed off is approximately 3 metres wide, with the garage entrance proposed to be 4 metres wide. So I'll just try to share my screen and play this recording. How do I do that? Sorry, just having a couple of technical issues bringing this up.
Lee, can I just jump in here? I know that the video link was given to as part of the paperwork for us to read for tonight. Yep. So if that link isn't working for you, I know that I think if I talk on behalf of the councillors that say that they have all seen it. So I'm happy for you to continue.
All right, no worries. So if everyone's seen it, that is fantastic. So in the video, the applicant has demonstrated that the turning movements using a Lexus 200 NT medium SUV. The length of that SUV is 4.63 metres with a width of 1.87 metres. The dimensions under the Australian standards for a standard B99 car, which is the size of vehicle that is required to be considered in this instance, is 5.2 metres in length. So that's a significant difference between what was used in that demonstrated video, which required 5 turning movements to access into that site. The lesser standard for that, which we don't consider, which is the B85 standard, is the length of the car for that is 4.9 metres, which again is greater than what was used in that video demonstration. So that basically required five corrective movements to align the car in the garage and the proposed stacker within the garage. It is noted in this video that the driver also needs to utilise the reversing cameras and aerial view perspective, as well as the front and rear parking beepers, and they are required to fully turn the steering wheel before each movement to access that area. This whole process shown in the video takes over sort of a minute and a half to actually access that car park. And depending on how the driver intends to exit the site, may need to reverse out into Star Street itself if they don't manoeuvre into a position to be able to drive out in a forward direction. It is considered that under the Australian standards, 3 turning movements are acceptable when entering and exiting a car space. This has been clarified by VCAT, who have previously made a determination in 2017 that the intention of the Australian standard is to allow a single corrective manoeuvre, so that's up to 4 vehicle movements when entering or exiting a residential car space. This is to allow the car, this 4 movements is to allow the car to exit in a forward direction. The particular provision for car parking, as set out under the decision guidelines within the planning scheme of this clause, seeks to ensure the ease and safety with which vehicles can access and circulate within the parking areas. As demonstrated by the submitted turning movements plan submitted by the applicant, the proposal requires approximately 9 turning movements, which was based on the B99 standard, Australian standard, to access and align a car within the garage. It is considered that given the number of movements, the access will create an unacceptable outcome and also creates a safety concern, as there are no sight lines for vehicles exiting the site. Therefore, the recommendation was to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for that. At this stage, we will open it up to questions from the panel. So if I can just look to my fellow councillors for questions. Councillor Mason, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. I just wonder, has there been any negotiation or has there been any attempt to find out why this car, why the garage is so important, and is there any negotiation position on the size of the vehicle that might be allowed to enter, such as it's designed only, for example, for compact vehicles? Has there been any discussions around that compromising, or is it just we're sticking to those standards?
Well, I guess we have to stick to the Australian standards. I know the applicant has said that they're happy for, or the owner even is happy for the amount of turning movements into and out of that garage area. But if they decide that they want to on-sell that property, it then creates potentially an issue down the track of how council could allow a space with the amount of turning movements that are required to enter and exit. So we do stand by the Australian standards.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Anyone else have a question for the officer in this space? Councillor Harwood.
Thanks, Kylie. I put it up in the chat box there, but Lee, was the use of mirrors placed outside in the laneways of the proposed development considered, which we see the use of mirrors quite often in around tight turning areas and blind spots?
Look, the use of mirrors, it wasn't considered. However, the mirrors wouldn't help the issue in regards to the amount of movements in and out. From that video, you can quite clearly see how the technology that was required to enter into that site and how close you can hear the beepers that go off as the turning movements are made. So, look, we wouldn't want to see the car sort of back into any of the walls, causing damage to both the walls and the vehicles. The mirrors would help sort of those sight lines if they were positioned there potentially, but it wouldn't help the amount of movements that are required and how close vehicles have to actually get to those walls.
Okay, thank you.
Open for further questions. Councillor Contel.
Yeah, thank you. Could someone explain to us the aspects around the planning permit that was originally issued at the time of the application, which we understand from what was presented that the Minister of Planning had already issued a planning permit for this area. Is that right?
There was a previous planning permit issued by the Minister for Planning. It wasn't just this subject site, it was the adjoining sites as well, to develop a residential building within that area.
And I think that's what you were articulating earlier on, is that it actually does comply with that aspect, doesn't it?
So the development itself, it does generally comply with the use, allowing that use in the area, and the Res Code requirements, Clause 54 requirements in relation to the use and development being in that location, yes.
So if I could follow on from Councillor Contell's question, it appears as if everything complies other than the parking, and therefore it appears as if the applicant wants this stacker and wants to have the two vehicles in there. If there was no garage and etc., everything would comply. Is that correct?
Not with the garage. So if there wasn't a garage there, it still doesn't meet the Australian standards sort of to get in and out of that site. So that's the big issue. So you are correct in that's the issue, the fact that there is the number of movements that there is to get in and out of that site.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Aiken?
Lee, you mentioned, because nearly all modern vehicles have beepers on them, was there any acoustic measurements taken as well too? Because it sounds like they're going to be going off all the time unless someone's actually got them permanently switched off on their vehicles. So was any evidence presented or commitments that could be adhered to in that regard?
Sorry, say your question again, please. Sorry. So so
you've indicated how many movements there are, but both forward and reverse movements in modern vehicles actually cause noise alarms as well too in the vehicles. Was there any acoustic measurements made, and the impact that it would make on the surrounding residential areas if there's none whatsoever?
No.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. I might at this point read the just the summary of the applicant's submission, and then you can ask some further questions if you like. So the summary of the applicant's submission is that the applicant noted there were no objections. Halfway through the advertising requirement, it was deemed to be exempt from this requirement. And the movie link that we referred to in the report demonstrates that a 5-car movement are required to enter the garage and align a vehicle to park in the car stacker. The owner proposes a condition to the issue of the planning permit to install a parabolic traffic mirror mounted off the southern wall of the garage, so that would orientate the views of car movements. So I'll open it up to councillors if you've got any further questions at this point of the officers. So if we have no further questions, do I have any councillor that wishes to move either the original motion or any other different motion that they may wish to move? Councillor Contell.
Yeah, Councillor Grisbeck, thank you. I'd like to move an alternate to the recommendation, which I believe councillors have been provided.
Yes, Councillor Contell, would you mind reading that for us, please?
Yes, yep, I'll do that. It's that council determined to grant a planning permit for the change of use from a workshop to a dwelling and demolition works, alterations and additions to the existing building at 4 Star Street, Geelong, subject to the following conditions. Did you want me to go through all the conditions?
Sorry, Councillor Contell, I think we should, just for the record.
There is quite a number of them, as you can imagine. Do you want me just to go through the heading or absolutely every word underneath those?
I might ask officers, Joanne, what would you prefer?
No, look, I think most councillors have a copy of the alternate recommendation, so I think we'd be happy that they're all listed there, the conditions. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Councillor Contell. Over to you.
Yeah, look, understand the officer's recommendation. However, as we continue to evolve as a city, we are going to start to see more density in the dwellings that are being built, particularly in and around the CBD. The encouragement to limit the amount of vehicle usage is also continuing to be a drive for us, as is using smaller vehicles that are less reliant on fossil fuels and of that nature. That's exactly what's trying to be achieved here. The owner of the dwelling has no interest in owning a vehicle that's 5.1 metres long. Their intent is to have small vehicles. They think that this suits their purposes quite well. There's been no objections for the application from any of the neighbouring properties. And I think some of this out-of-the-box thinking needs to start to be encouraged as we start to evolve as a city. So I'd like to put it forward on that basis.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Mason?
Yes. Do you want me to speak now? Or?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, I support the motion. I agree with Councillor Contel that the opportunities for compact vehicles and living in a higher density city, a more livable city. It's unfortunate the regulations are as they are. It may be that if it goes to VCAT, there'll be a different decision, but I think we should be flexible at this stage, and I'll leave it. Just on Section 2, the Section 173 agreement makes it clear that it has to go onto the title, that there are these constraints, and therefore any purchaser would be aware, any future purchaser would then be made aware of the constraints, or if they desire to have a big limo going in there, they should know that it won't work. So I think that's a reasonable amendment, especially with that Section 173 agreement.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Would any other councillors like to make comment? Councillor Harwood?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I support the alternate. I think it demonstrates, a clever and creative way of thinking about this opportunity and the solution that's been put forward. And I think anybody who's looking to reside in that property would be more than cognizant of the issue of the car movements, and I think they would adapt accordingly. So I support the potential development. Thank you. Thank
you, Councillor Harwood. Any other councillors have a comment to make at this point? We have lost Councillor Murray, so I just might give him a moment to see if he's coming back in. We
still have a quorum.
We still have a quorum. Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Thank you. This is my first time chairing the planning committee, so thank you for your help.
Just keep the number 6 uppermost in your mind.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So at this point, we've put that recommendation to the vote. All those in favour of the... Sorry, Councillor Aiken, did you want to say something?
Kylie, I'm uncomfortable. Has Councillor Murray officially left the meeting and is returning, or is he just dropped out? Because I think it actually does have to be documented. You can't just sort of disappear and then come back. Can we get our staff to confirm if he has actually physically left the meeting, or is actually just suffering technical issues, because it is appropriate. Yeah.
Yep. Councillor Support, would you mind? It looks like he's coming back in at the moment, Councillor Aiken. So I think he must have just had some technical difficulties. Councillor Murray, we welcome you back. Thank you. Did you have anything to say on the alternate motion before we vote?
No, I don't, Madam Chair, but I have received a message from a couple who are attempting to live stream this, and they're having difficulties. The line's dropping in and out. They're able to watch it, then it drops out again, which it did to me as well. So I apologise for that.
That's okay. Thank you. And hopefully we can see the recording afterwards of it live, not live, a recording of it afterwards at some point. Hopefully they can tune in then. At this point, we will continue, and I'm about to put the alternate motion to the vote. All those in favour of the alternate motion, please. Okay, those against, we have none against, and that is carried. Thank you very much that the alternative is carried. We will now head to the other item on our agenda today, which is the item for 24 Stephen Street, Newtown, and that is PP 258-2020. I have Claire here as an officer from the city to take us through that application. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. So the site is located on the southern side of Stephen Street, Newtown, in a neighbourhood residential zone Schedule 2 and within a heritage overlay Schedule 2006 and design and development overlay Schedule 14. The site is identified as 24 Stephen Street, Newtown. However, the title contains 2 separate lots, including Lot 1 and Lot 5. This application concerns Lot 1, which has a frontage of 6.8 metres and a depth of 42.8 metres, resulting in a total area of 292 square metres. The site is occupied by an existing brick garage that historically was used as a stable for the building at the rear, fronting onto a Fraser Street. The proposal is for partial demolition of the existing garage and construction of a double-storey dwelling at the rear. The dwelling has 3 bedrooms and has a maximum height of 7.3 metres. The existing garage is included within the heritage overlay, however, is not recognised as being significant. The application has required a planning permit under the zone for buildings and works as the lot is less than 300 square metres, and the heritage overlay on the site for partial demolition and buildings and works. The application was referred through to our heritage advisor, Dr. David Rowe, who is supportive of the proposal and has noted that it provides a positive outcome in relation to the relevant heritage policy. The proposal was advertised via sign on the site and letters to the adjoining properties. Following the notice period, the application received 9 objections and 1 was later withdrawn, so the total number of objections is 8. No consultation meeting was held given the COVID situation. However, the applicant prepared a written response which was circulated to all of the objectors. The objections received relate to neighbourhood character and heritage issues, res code issues, including overshadowing, overlooking, site coverage, traffic issues, and concern that the proposal may create a precedent for other sites within this area. The proposal has been assessed against the relevant sections of the zone, overlay, and Victorian and local planning policy framework and is considered acceptable. And as a result, it's recommended that the proposal be supported.
Thank you, Claire. At this point, I'll open up to councillors for questions. Any questions at the moment of officers on this particular item? Okay, I'm going to go and find my document now that I've just lost to read to you just a quick summary of what we're seeing from applicants and from objectors. So at this point, the objector submission, there was one objector submission that I'd like to call out, and that is Joe Jurek. He says that this doesn't keep within the character of the street and the heritage overlay. It demonstrates an inappropriate build and plans have not taken into account the morning overshadowing of a bedroom window. The overall depth of the built form on the site will ultimately lead to loss of amenity for neighbouring sites and disrupt the backyard character of dwellings along Stephen Street. The applicant has also made a submission and noted that the support has been provided for the proposal by the city's heritage advisor and the statutory planning department, as we heard from Claire. The applicant has said that this proposal keeps the streetscape character untouched and will provide a contemporary high-end dwelling to the rear of the coach house, resulting in a barely visible extension, which is appropriate, symptomatic way to develop the land in a heritage overlay. So I will open it up for further questions at this point. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair Chris Beck. Stephen Street is a very interesting street. It's one of the most passionate and unique planting wide streets we have there, and a lot of planning applications do come to us because unique character. In regards to the neighbourhood character, though, on one side here we have an application for an extraordinarily narrow, small, high-density living. When across the other side of the street, we have some of the largest residential blocks in residential Geelong. Can I ask officers just for clarification on how a block of this size suits neighbourhood amenity and character, when across the other side of the street we have, we've gone to great lengths to protect larger block sizes?
I probably should just clarify that the lot is existing, so they're not actually proposing to subdivide the land off. So it's an existing condition of the site. And within our Heritage Advisor's referral response, he's included some information about how the title was actually created. So originally it was a stable for the building at the rear, so in a Fraser Street. And then it's got in 1954 that it was subdivided off. So yeah, I acknowledge that there is a difference between this site and across the roads. Clearly, larger block size. Across the road is a lot of garaging, so it presents as the back end of those dwellings. But nothing's really changing in terms of this lot. It exists currently, and the garage is there, so that won't change regardless of whether you decide to support the application or not.
It's interesting because having this, subdivided or whatnot, made a different title. 66 years ago, our city was vastly different and our suburbs were quite different. So to make a decision for us going forward on that, if that's what we want for Newtown and Stephen Street in particular, I just feel like that's quite interesting, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I'll probably just add, there are some other examples of where this has happened in the past. So I can share my screen if you wanted me to. There are some examples in Ruthven Street, so the street around the corner, where it's a similar situation with a garage at the front and quite a small lot. So I wouldn't say that it's completely out of character for this type of proposal.
Thank you. We won't share the screen because I think we've got enough information in the pack there. I'll go to Councillor Mason, please.
Thank you, Chair Grisbeck. I've got a couple of questions. Perhaps I didn't understand it in reading the documents, the overshadowing complaint. It might have come from number 15, which is across the road. Is that correct? That I don't understand who is being overshadowed, or is it just the suggestion that the neighbouring house will be overshadowed? Who is actually the owner and the applicant? So that's my first question.
Okay. So from my understanding, the additional submission that was sent through was from the adjoining dwelling, so at number 26 Stephen Street. There was some other objections put through that raised concern with overshadowing generally. I think you're right, from across the road, but it's also been raised from the property next door, so number 26 Stephen Street, and there was some concern of overshadowing of the swimming pool next door.
But according to your recommendation, that still complies with regulations?
Yeah, in terms of overshadowing, the assessment is on the overshadowing of private open space, and it does meet that standard.
And my second question is related to the old coach house. I understand that doesn't have formal heritage recognition, but it is recognised by our Heritage Advisor as a valuable building, and that is to be retained, as is the owner next door is to renovate his heritage character building to remove recent additions to it which degrade it. Is that so?
Yeah, so the site does have a heritage overlay, but we have different sort of listings and different levels of significance. So you can be included within a heritage overlay but not actually have any significance. So that's the case with this site. With the garage, our heritage advisor has noted that it does have some significance, but it hasn't actually been recognised as formally having that significance. And the house next door, I think you're probably thinking of something that they'd written in their application about renovating the house next door, because it's the same, the owner has both sites, so the garage and the dwelling.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other, did you have something further, Councillor Mason?
Oh, well, I was just going through some of the documents, and I understand that the owner, if this is knocked back, will go ahead with another development on that site, which is proposed to be two units of some description. So in that case, that semi-heritage coach house would no longer exist. So that's another aspect of of what might happen in that street and its character. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other councillors have a question in relation to this item? I do have one myself. So in relation to, there are some existing trees on the site. Claire, can you talk us through why that seemed to be okay to pull down those trees?
Sure. So in terms of tree protection, there's a number of different overlays that we have. So there might be like a vegetation protection overlay, a significant landscape overlay, and there is another clause that we have for native vegetation, and native vegetation is only triggered when the size of the land is over 0.4 hectares. So in this case, there is no actual overlays that are protecting the trees. So there's no really control over what happens with the trees. So the applicant or the owner could go ahead and remove the trees. They are keeping a tree on the existing dwelling next door, so the liquid amber is being retained, which should have some impact on softening the appearance of the new dwelling, as if you're coming from that part of Stevens Street.
Thank you. And the further question I had was around the overlooking into the other two properties. So I would presume that the buildings would be quite close in the sense of, and that the current, so one side has a pool and the other sort of got their major dwelling next door from what I can see. So the overlooking in terms of windows and coverage, has the development ensured that wouldn't be the case about looking into the other properties?
Yeah, so on the western side, there isn't actually any upper floor windows. There is some voids. So in terms of the overlooking standard, you only have to address overlooking if it's a habitable room. So because they're voids and like a stairwell, they don't have to have any screening. On the other side, they do have screening, and I have I've recommended that they just add the word fixed to, to the southern upper floor window to reflect the wording within the actual standard. It's just like a minor thing that it has to be fixed, but yeah, basically it meets overlooking just with that condition that I've recommended they do.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, over to you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, if I may go again. I'd like to see some further clarification on the point that Councillor Mason rose. Have we received indication from the applicant that if this application has been knocked back, they will submit another application of a larger scale, this block?
That's what the applicant has indicated that they would do. I guess there's not really any certainty that they will do that. It's something that they've indicated in their submission, that if this application doesn't receive support, that they may go down that option. But I guess nothing's really certain ever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I know that there was there any other questions of Councillor Contal?
Yes, thank you. And I was just wondering whether there was any possibility of any compromise along the way. Did it get close to that, or has it been a real split between objectors and the applicant? Has there been any possibility of compromise on both sides that could have perhaps prevented it from getting to this point, or potentially still could prevent it from getting to this type of a forum or VCAT, should I suggest?
In terms of compromise, do you mean like whether there's been an opportunity for them to change the design?
Well, on both parts, the objectors and the applicant, yeah.
So I guess I should probably just say that the application and the plans have been prepared by a local designer that we deal with, that's got some good knowledge of Geelong. And we do have a pre-application meeting process where applicants come in and discuss their plans, and they did make some changes to their plans before they actually lodged the application. Originally, they were going for a higher dwelling height, and also they were proposing a wall and boundary on the western side. So they've changed it over to the eastern.
Sorry, I'll just intervene for a sec. Have we had the two parties together, like we have with previous applications where there's been an opportunity to almost mediate?
Yeah, usually like there is that opportunity, but given COVID, we weren't able to organise those sort of meetings face to face. The applicant prepared a written response to the objectors, and that resulted in one of the objections being withdrawn. So that's what, I guess, in terms of consultation, that's what happened.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I wanted to see if there was anyone wanting to move a recommendation on this matter. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. I wish to move an alternate recommendation to planning permit 258-2020 at 24 Stephen Street in Newtown.
And is that the moving of that alternate small enough to read, Councillor Murray, or should we take it as read?
Well, I know it's each councillor has a copy of the alternate recommendation, but I might just briefly read through it. The responsible authority, having considered all matters which the Planning and Environment Act 1987 requires it to consider, decides to refuse to grant a planning permit for the partial demolition and construction of a dwelling on a lot less than 300 square metres in a heritage overlay and relocation of easement. And on the following grounds, and I'll just summarise this, that it's inconsistent with the neighbourhood character. It's inconsistent in the residential zone area. It provides an inappropriate outcome, taking into some issues with the trees, some side and rear setbacks and boundary issues, and inconsistent, and the result would be inappropriate given the modest lot size. And if I could just speak on that.
I'll just grab a seconder. Sorry, if I want to just grab a seconder for that motion. Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Go, Councillor Murray, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I'm going to apply what I believe people would expect when they live or they purchase a property in within a heritage area overlay, and the expectations on the protection of that area. And I don't believe the residents or the public in general would expect any different. The Stephen Street, and in fact all that area, is quite a unique area. And being that the application triggers a planning permit under the zone of the buildings and works and the heritage overlay on the site. So what I believe is at issue is whether the proposed dwelling and alterations to the existing garage will have an adverse effect on the significance, the character and the appearance of this part of the Newtown West heritage area. And I place a fair bit of weight on that. As I said, I believe the argument about the effect that this would have on the neighbourhood character, I place a fair bit of weight on that. And I know the officers didn't place too much emphasis on precedents, but I do. I believe it'd be remiss if you didn't consider something like this, what precedent would affect and would have on the area. So considering all those, I'm moving the alternate, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Over to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I support all the words that Councillor Murray has stated just there. I do find this inconsistent with the neighbourhood character first and foremost. I do not believe it respects the existing and preferred neighbourhood character of all residents in this area. In terms of urban consolidation, that's a part of the city's part of where we live. However, this policy seeks to limit change to neighbourhood residential zones. And I believe this is a very large change to what currently exists in the area. Significant trees are involved, or a tree rather. That's something that we put great value from the city. We try to make every effort not to remove trees of significance where possible. The side and rear setbacks and a wall on the boundary is quite a concern for me. This may be a separate title. However, you do not buy a house in this street or the surrounding streets in the area of Newtown and expect to have a neighbour living right on your boundary with a large wall there, causing overshadowing, as said. I believe it's inconsistent with our scheme, and as a result, the proposal is likely to be detrimental to have an effect on the amenity of the area. So I happily second Councillor Murray's alternative recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any other councillors wish to make comment on this one, please? Councillor Mason.
I'm sorry, Councillor Grisbeck. I'm inclined to not support the alternative motion, in that the Heritage Advisor has advised that it's within the heritage parameters, and that also we do need to expect some incremental changes. The setback of this building is such that it is quite a distance back from the street, and that I think that the keeping that garage and the history of that old coach house is and would remain an important part of the street. And I also note that the very quite a portion of the street is back entrances on the northern side, and so seeing that coach house in relation to all of the other back entrances, I don't think it's inconsistent, and I think it's a reasonable proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other councillors have? Councillor Aiken?
Yeah, look, I actually agree with Councillor Mason's summary on this particular one. I actually think the officer has done an exceptional job in trying to manage this planning permit in terms of the objections and what's been presented before us. I don't think we can also dismiss that there may be a more inappropriate development that actually is brought forward to council if this particular proposal is rejected, and that's something we have to consider as well too. In our thoughts and strategic decisions that we're making as well too as councillors. I put a lot of weight on the fact that our heritage advisor has actually supported the proposal. And they are the professional technical expertise we have associated with making a strategic decision about heritage and the protection that it does undertake. So I'm actually against the alternative recommendation that's been put forward and support the statements that Councillor Mason has actually made.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm supporting the alternate on, I guess, having knowledge, long-term knowledge of the area, and I guess the significance of properties in and around there, and their significance to our history of Geelong, and what the neighbourhood character is in that region. I don't support a much smaller property that I think would be detrimental to the neighbourhood character and to the amenity of that area. And I guess I've seen this on a number of occasions where properties change dramatically and have an adverse effect on the neighbourhood. And I'll use Belmont as an example, where you have established areas and these types of developments. I understand why the applicant's making this application. I understand the rationale behind it, and I appreciate the comments of our heritage advisor. But just on this occasion, I don't support it because I fear, well, my rationale is it would have an adverse effect on the neighbourhood character and amenity, and I don't support that.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Contell.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Grisbeck. It does trouble me that the opportunity perhaps hasn't been created or taken to bring the parties more closer together, because I have seen on a number of occasions in very close proximity to Stephen Street developments that started off with a significant objection, and we've been able to bring the parties collectively together to be able to get an outcome where both have perhaps not won, but got an outcome that was more palatable to all. And I think that is always the best way to move forward in these types of planning applications where it becomes a bit contentious. And unfortunately, that hasn't occurred on this one here. We need to do everything we can to encourage that type of engagement in the future. The amount of objectors, and whilst there's only, I think 9 that have been noted here, that the amount that I had received calls from and even emails was significantly more than that. And in that, I can't sit here and not take that on board, given the concerns that they raised with me. So I will be supporting the alternate on this occasion, as much as it troubles me to just simply object to the application.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Any other comments from councillors? At this stage, I'd probably just like to make a comment on this particular item. I am going to support the alternate recommendation based on the fact that I'm not looking at what might be there in the future. This is a decision based on this particular item right now. Having said that, if there was a future development, then that would go through the same process as this one. So we will judge that on its merits. So it's not about what might go there. I'm looking at this particular application and its merits here. And unfortunately, I think that this is probably, in my personal view, not the right place for a particular development like this. I like the idea and the thinking of thinking outside the box, the infill of this type of planning. But there are too many, for me, mitigating factors as to why I would think this is probably not the appropriate way to go about the development at this point. So I will be supporting the alternate. On saying that, is there any other final comments before we move to the vote on this one? No? Okay. I'll put the alternate recommendation to the vote. For those in favour of the alternate recommendation, please raise your hands. Those against the alternate recommendation? Thank you. The alternate recommendation has been carried. That brings tonight's meeting to an end, and I'd like to thank all of my fellow councillors for spending their time, and officers for spending their time tonight. Thank you and have a good evening, and we will see you at the next council meeting. Thank you.